Coming up in today's newscast, Russia completes its delivery of S-300 missile defense systems to Syria. The International Court of Justice at The Hague demands the United States suspend sanctions against Iran, and a new Israeli study finds that our handwriting may reveal a lot more about our mood than one might expect. Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu confirmed yesterday that the shipment of S-300 air defense systems to Syria has been completed. Reporting to President Putin, Shoigu said the work was finished a day ago, and Syrian officials say that now Israel will have to think twice before striking. According to Shoigu, the delivery of the S-300 complexes includes 49 pieces of equipment, illuminating laser radio locators, defense priority systems, control vehicles, and 4 missile launchers. Further, by the end of October, Russia hopes to have a fully operational and unified control system for air defense in Syria. On the other side, however, the United States and Israel have warned against this delivery. The United States State Department said Tuesday that the sale of S-300s to Syria would be a serious escalation, and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu described the move last week as putting advanced weapon systems into irresponsible hands, leading to increased dangers in the region. That being said, the sale is unlikely to stem Israeli operations in Syria. Israel has clarified to Moscow that it will continue to operate in Syria as it sees fit to defend Israeli sovereignty, and the United States has vocalized its full support for such actions as well. And last week, an Israeli official said that while the S-300 anti-aircraft missiles posed a unique challenge, it will be dealt with, quote, in different ways, not necessarily by preventing the delivery, end quote. Israel's Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman similarly stated that the IDF wouldn't shy away from simply destroying the S-300 systems upon their installment. Regardless, what remains in the region is the feeling of a powder keg after regional tensions were further stoked by the downing of a Russian aircraft last month. Syrian forces shot down a Russian reconnaissance plane by accident, killing all 15 members on board, while allegedly trying to return fire against an Israeli airstrike. Russia blames Israel for misrepresenting and underreporting their operations in Syria, while Israel claims to be fully cooperating with Russia as per agreements. Joining us now in the studio with more on the delivery of Russian S-300 missile systems to Syria is Zev Levin, the head of the Central Eurasian Research Unit at the Harry S. Truman Institute of the Hebrew University. Thank you so much for coming in. Thank you. Welcome back. So, first of all, what does this delivery mean for the region? Let's start there.
Well, there are quite a few angles to this action. First of all, upgrading the systems on ground, providing more security for the Syrian air and controlling the situation or threatening Israeli Air Force or any other aircrafts crossing the boundaries that the Russians set on ground, first. Second is saying quite firmly that Russians wouldn't tolerate anymore any uncoordinated or unapproved actions of Israelis against any target on Syrian ground, if it would it be Syrian or Iranian or whatsoever. And actually, Israeli actions on ground and via air are pretty much embarrassing Russia in Syria, because Israeli air forces were doing pretty much working on air without any restraints, and showing that the old system, the S-200, are pretty much incapable of doing anything against the Israeli strikes. Now, when the Russians provided the new systems, Israel will engage a dual impact in their actions. First, they probably could overcome this threat, but then will be embarrassing even the Russians furthermore, saying that their newer missiles couldn't stop them. And this will be quite a political problem for Israel, because Israel is in for quite a few years now is playing a middleman role between the U.S. and Russia. For one stand, not embracing the sanctions, and Prime Minister Netanyahu is visiting Putin on various occasions, and they have numerous telephone talks, so they have open channels and coordination on ground about Syria and other aspects. So once again, showing that U.S.-made and provided systems are more capable than the Russians are not in direct Israeli interest anymore.
So I'd like to address maybe the second 2 points that you said. The first one, or rather the second point that you made, you were talking about, Russian capabilities and I'm sorry, Israeli kind of embarrassing Russia. Do you think that the S-300s will again, you mentioned that Israel doesn't want to embarrass Russia, but then at the same time, will Israel continue to operate anyway, as they said? Do you believe that they'll continue to operate anyway? And will the S-300 pose a real problem to that?
History shows that the Israel Defense Forces were considering about Israel defense. And if there will be considerable threat that Israel wouldn't tolerate or say that we can't pass this red line. Sure. Here again, we have still on-ground coordination systems with the Russian forces on ground, and maybe this time the coordination will be firmer, and our forces will say we will have to target this place, or make them go away by yourself. And here we have the combination between the political and the army ability. But here again, I think that is there a threat about the posing of these missile systems on ground? And much more than this is about setting and putting on ground coordination centers that operating them, and which weren't there till now. It could bring a new wave or rebirth of the weapons race in the Middle East once again between the U.S. and Russia.
Well, okay, so again, kind of going back to the aspect of embarrassment, if Israel were to strike the S-300s successfully, how would Russia likely respond to that? Would they spark an arms race, as you said? Would they just keep sending bigger and better arms to Syria?
Well, this is what I said. It's quite a danger of the rebirth of the arm race, which was present in the Middle East in the 70s and in the 80s, where the Americans were supplying the Israelis and the Russians were supplying all other Arab countries with the top weaponry over and over again. And here again, I'm not a weapons specialist, so I kind of not sure what I'm talking about now, but S-300 was built in the late 70s. And I read the news, I listened to the Russian channels. No one talks about what kind of modification of S-300 were supplied to Syria. So it might be that they didn't provide the newest modification. And once again, Russians say that they have already S-400, and they will launch in a few years S-500. So once again,
so this isn't even the newest kind of.
It's surely not the newest kind, and once again, if Israel will be forced to act, I think that the political considerations will be on top of this, not about if they can or cannot, but what will be the outcome. What will be
the political outcome? All right, Zev Levine, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for inviting me.
Following Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu's insistence that the International Atomic Energy Agency needs to investigate new and secret atomic sites in Iran, IAEA head Yukiya Amano has fired back, saying the agency doesn't take evidence at face value. Netanyahu first made his claims last week at the United Nations General Assembly and has since reiterated that the UN must inspect the atomic warehouses immediately, quote, before the Iranians finish clearing it out. But in a statement in response to Netanyahu's accusations, Amano said, quote, the agency sends inspectors to sites and locations only when needed. The agency uses all safeguards relevant to information available to it, but it does not take any information at face value. All information obtained, including from third parties, is subject to rigorous review and assessed together with other available information to arrive at an independent assessment based on the agency's own expertise, end quote. But Netanyahu isn't satisfied, releasing a statement of his own from the Prime Minister's office, suggesting that if inspectors with Geiger counters were sent immediately, the Prime Minister's words will be proven true. Meanwhile, as the UN and Israel go back and forth on these latest accusations, the International Court of Justice in The Hague has just ruled that the United States must lift the sanctions on humanitarian aid reimposed on the Iranian regime following the U.S.'s pullout from the JCPOA nuclear agreement. The court unanimously ruled that the United States must, quote, remove by means of its choosing any impediments arising from the measures announced on May 8th to the free exportation to Iran of medicines, medical devices, food, and agricultural commodities, end quote, including even airplane parts. Tehran first raised the issue of U.S. sanctions to the International Court of Justice in July, citing a 1955 treaty, And in accordance with the ruling, the court will now hear Iran's case against the U.S. in full, during which time the sanctions on Iran are to be suspended. The ICJ rules on any issues between member states of the United Nations, and its decisions are final and binding. That being said, there is no mechanism or punitive measures in place to enforce these rulings. A high-ranking official in the Transportation Ministry has just been arrested on charges of bribery, fraud, receiving an illegal gift, and breach of trust for taking those gifts, all in exchange for promoting a bus company's interests and favoring it for certain transportation routes. The yet unnamed official, along with 4 other suspects who were accused of similar and related charges, and 2 additional individuals, have all been interrogated by the Lahab 433 Anti-Corruption Unit, and the suspects' homes and offices have also been raided and searched. The investigation at the Lahab 433 began as an undercover investigation and became public as the arrests were announced. And according to a police spokesperson, quote, "The Israeli police will continue to investigate and expose improper procedures and to find any case where there is suspicion of public corruption that harms the government and its citizens," end quote. Following the investigation, if deemed necessary, the suspects will be taken to the Rishon LeZion Magistrates Court. German Chancellor Angela Merkel is set to land in Israel today, accompanied by leading German business people, for 2 days of meetings with Prime Minister Netanyahu and other top Israeli officials. The meetings will focus on economy, innovation, and technology, and indeed, Chancellor Merkel has previously cited Israel as, quote, one of the world market leaders in information technology and cybersecurity, continuing that we can learn a lot in many ways. Merkel also stressed the unique relationship between Germany and Israel on her podcast, saying that Germans have a special responsibility for the relationship and that they are very thankful for the close partnership and friendship with Israel. Aside from the economic business, though, Merkel will also go to the Yad Vashem Holocaust Museum in Jerusalem for the 3rd time and receive her 3rd honorary doctorate from an Israeli university. But while this visit highlights Israel and Germany's historically close partnership, it also exposes deep policy disagreements between the two regarding geopolitical issues and the Israel-Palestinian conflict. Currently, specifically, the demolition of Khan al-Ahmar and the conflict over the Iran nuclear deal. Netanyahu and Merkel have deep disagreements on all of these issues, particularly with Khan al-Ahmar, where Israel says that the village was illegally built. Israel also offered to resettle residents a few miles away, but Palestinians and other critics say demolition is aimed at displacing Palestinians for settlement expansion. And on Tuesday, students at Khan al-Ahmar held posters of Merkel pleading for her to pressure Israel to halt the approved demolition plan. Merkel is not expected to enter Palestinian territories during this itinerary, but still, Germany and several other European countries have already expressed their criticisms in destroying the village, and Khan al-Ahmar has certainly been placed on the docket for discussion. An appeals court in Jerusalem on Tuesday held a landmark hearing about whether the Interior Ministry can or cannot cancel the residency status of 3 Palestinians. The Palestinians in question are extended family members of terrorist Fadi al-Kanbar, who murdered 4 IDF soldiers in January 2017. In the attack, 4 soldiers, 3 female and 1 male, were declared dead at the scene, and 17 more were wounded when a truck driven by Fadi al-Kanbar slammed into the group of soldiers next to the Armona Netziv neighborhood in southeastern Jerusalem. PIBA, the Population, Immigration, and Border Authority lawyers, argued that the Interior Minister does have the authority to cancel residency permits, as emergency rules give him the right to cancel statuses for clear and concrete security reasons. Dani Shenhar, an attorney for human rights organization Hamoked, disputed PIBA's position, however, saying that canceling a residency was never tried in such circumstances and that PIBA has no authority to do so anyway. He said at most there is a legal basis to cancel residency of people linked to the attacker where there is concrete information that they themselves present a security risk. Hamoked then added that it's absurd to cancel residency for these particular Palestinians, given that they are second-degree relatives. A final decision is expected in the coming weeks. The Malaysian Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad is in the UK this week, and while in an interview with the BBC, he proceeded to make a slew of vicious and blatant anti-Semitic and anti-Jewish statements. During the interview, he stated that Jews are, quote, hook-nosed, and when the interviewer said that viewers could find his remarks offensive, he stated that, quote, many people called the Malaysians fat-nosed, we didn't object, we didn't go to war for that, end quote. But as if it couldn't get any worse, he went on to claim that the consensus that over 6 million Jews were killed in the Holocaust was an exaggeration, and that the number was only 4 million. Further still, he then blamed all the problems in the Middle East on Israel and the creation of the Jewish state. Last week, Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad lambasted Israel to the United Nations General Assembly, criticizing the Jewish state for breaching international law and what he called terrorism in regards to the Palestinians. And apart from asking about the perceived offensiveness of the hook-nosed statement, at no point in the interview with the BBC was the Prime Minister rebutted or challenged for his vitriolic anti-Semitic views. However, several Jewish groups have protested about the fact that PM Mohammed was recently invited to speak at Oxford University and the Imperial College in London. Gideon Falter, chairman of the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism, was appalled that someone who is so outwardly anti-Semitic would be courted on a news outlet and allowed to tour universities and share his opinions with students. Prime Minister Mohammed, however, counterattacked the groups, saying that, quote, anti-Semitic is a term that is invented to prevent people from criticizing the Jews for doing wrong things, end quote. All right, now music lovers, pay attention. We all know that music can transport us to a different time and place, but my next guest is here to discuss a very special symphony set to be heard later this month in Vienna. So please welcome mathematician and composer, Dr. Baruch Berliner. Thank you very much for coming in, Doctor.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
All right, so, tell us a little bit about this piece, the Symphony of Genesis, I believe?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
It was my idea to compose a symphony, a symphonic poem with biblical text, and that the music describes what the narrator is reading. And now it was of a great success around the world, in the USA, all over Europe, and in Israel. And now it's coming to Vienna, which is a capital of music. And I'm very excited about it because I have deep roots to Vienna.
So yeah, tell us a little bit about that, because I understand that up until World War II, you had quite a large family there.
That's right. My mother was with all her family up to World War II there. Her father founded nearly 100 years ago the Jewish gymnasium, and I will have the great pleasure to talk to pupils from that from the gymnasium that exists up to this day.
And this symphony, what are some of the pieces? Are these original compositions?
Everything original.
Everything is an original composition. And how long did it take to prepare this show?
Well, I must admit, I'm working also in other fields. My doctorate is in mathematics, so I couldn't work all the time. But it took 3.5 years.
Wow.
Together with a dear friend of mine who was also my musical teacher, Mr. Nahum Slutzker.
Final question, unfortunately, but where and when can we see this concert? When is the symphony playing in Vienna, and where can we get tickets, maybe for upcoming shows even beyond that?
It will be at the Musiktheater in Vienna, which is well known for its excellent acoustics. And it will be on Sunday, 14th of October at 3 p.m. in the afternoon.
Well, I'm very excited for you, honestly, I really am, and I'd love to hear this music. I can't wait until, maybe it'll come to Tel Aviv. But again, thank you so much for coming in, Doctor.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, Israeli researchers at Haifa University have just discovered a way to reveal people's moods based on their handwriting. The handwriting was analyzed based on the spaces between the words, the pressure of the writing tool on the paper, and the shape of the letters, all to determine a person's emotional state of mind. The researchers, Dr. Alon Kahane and Professor Gil Luria, worked with the Department of Occupational Therapy's Professor Sarah Rosenblum, who had previously studied the correlation between cognitive therapy and handwriting. Rosenblum had deduced that when the brain does several actions simultaneously, the secondary automatic actions are impaired. Her theory was used to then develop a software that evaluates changes in handwriting. This system, called the Computerized Penmanship Evaluation Tool, is used with an electronic writing board known as a digitizer, which measures and documents various elements in the writing. Through this advanced system, the researchers can measure people's moods, as well as whether a person is telling the truth or lying, and even if the person displays early signs of Parkinson's disease. In this latest study, people were divided into different groups and asked to watch movies that were intended to elicit various emotional responses. Each person was then asked to write a paragraph on the computerized penmanship evaluation system, which was then analyzed. Researchers reported that people who were in a negative mood wrote smaller and narrower letters than people in a positive mood. And this is the first study to use this technique to measure people's moods in a subjective way without relying on the person's own self-analysis or other complex physiological tests, which can disrupt one's regular routine. The Hot Jazz series is right now around the corner, bringing us some of Israel and the world's best jazz performers right here to the Holy Land. And ILTV's Emmanuel Kadosh is here with the details.
Thanks, Aaron. Yes, I absolutely adore jazz music. I know it's kind of weird, but I do love it. So I'm very excited for this upcoming festival, but just for a little background, the Hot Jazz series began about 24 years ago, hosting performances in the city of Haifa, Jerusalem, Herzliya, and of course Tel Aviv. This Hot Jazz series is considered to be the most significant international jazz series in the Israeli jazz scene, so this is very exciting.
All right, so I didn't even know that we had such festivals.
I know, exactly.
Here in Israel, let alone how many Israeli jazz performers there actually are here in the country. I know that if you know where to look, like Beit HaMudim and other certain clubs, like you can see a lot of great live jazz just about every other night of the week here.
Yeah.
Exactly, but I didn't expect this. So, tell me, what can we expect at this festival?
So yeah, like you said, there's a lot of live jazz shows all over Tel Aviv. This is actually the 4th year of the Jaffa Jazz Festival, which is a branch off of the Hot Jazz series, which is set for the October 4th through the 6th and is meant to celebrate the collaboration of jazz and pop music. There will be 13 jazz musicians from all over the world, and then 43 Israeli jazz players, yes, very surprising, 43, all performing in an amazing show that brings jazz to the Holy Land. And then there's the Hot Jazz shows, which are different shows all over Israel throughout the month of October, hosting top jazz musicians such as Dennis Lichman, Max Roach, Ellen Dantame, and many, many more.
All right, so this definitely sounds like an amazing experience.
Yes.
Where can I buy tickets to this festival and these shows?
Well, you should actually, get going on it because I already checked out the website, and you better hurry up because tickets are literally getting sold out very quickly. You can find all the information, get tickets, and learn a little about each musician on the Hot Jazz website.
All right, well, hopefully I can snag a ticket to the
so.
show.
Yeah.
But anyway, thank you for your update, Emmanuel.
Thank you.
All right, now try to imagine wireless charging anywhere, anytime, any place from nearly anything. Well, new Israeli startup Humavox promises exactly that. The technology has a tiny transmitter that can be embedded into anything you like, such as a drawer or in a bowl, as well as a tiny receiver that's placed in your phone or worn on your person. Electricity is then sent wirelessly by a standard near-field radio frequency. And then finally, the charging device understands what charging details your range of devices demand and adjusts accordingly to their specific power needs, battery material, and charging curve. Now, with the average family owning 24 electronic devices, this is definitely a helpful solution. But the vision does not stop there. Humavox's goal is to incorporate their technology in hospitals as well. There are sensors and wireless devices such as biometric wearable patches that measure heart rate, breathing patterns, temperature, stress levels, sleep cycle, and more. There are also battery-powered devices inside the human body like pacemakers, which last up to 10 years and require surgery to change the battery. Indeed, eventually, Humavox dreams of a world where all pacemaker-type batteries can be charged wirelessly and externally. And this vision was always the company's goal. The idea itself was born when CEO Omri Lachman and his co-founder Asaf El-Siboni had a friend who was injured during his service in the IDF. To manage the pain, doctors suggested a medical implant, but that battery life was even shorter than that of a pacemaker. And so while Lachman is sure that Humavox will one day help his army friend and many like him, for now they're focusing on everyday power tools such as phones, GoPros, hearing aids, and Fitbits, etc. And now for our Hebrew word of the day. Just about all of us have devices that run on batteries, be it something simple like a toy or a television remote, or something complicated and important like a pacemaker. So running out of battery can be more than inconvenient, it could even be dangerous. And that's why today's word is solela, meaning battery. As mentioned above, solelot, or batteries, are found practically everywhere you look, from the laser pointer that you use to drive cats insane to the cars we drive and the planes we fly. Just don't forget to keep your solela or battery at full charge, or else that thing you wanted to do will probably be a lot more difficult. Let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight should be clear to partly cloudy and warm with a low of 74 or 23 degrees Celsius. Then tomorrow you can expect partly cloudy skies and a slight drop in temperatures to a high of around 85 or 29 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.64 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv, and don't forget to follow us on Facebook at Israel English News and on Twitter at ILTV News. I'm Aaron Porras. Thank you for watching.